Hello and welcome everyone. I see people streaming in. Welcome to VFS Online Industry Talks. My name is Omari Newton, newly announced teacher, full-time teacher at Vancouver Film School. I'm very proud of. And I'm here with a special guest, Jason Mackay. Hello, Jason.
Hi, Omari. Thank you.
Hey, I'm good, man. And Jason is here in the capacity. I mean, he's done a lot of things. He's executive producer of the Kid Carson Show. But today we're talking about diversity in film and TV, a topic that's close to both of our hearts. Jason is the founder of the Collective Bunch, a Vancouver-based organization featuring a wide roster of culturally diverse BIPOC creatives working in screen-based industries and available for Canadian and American production media companies. Now, that was a very academic way of talking about it, but basically, you're trying to help diversify this film and TV industry.
Yes, and I'm trying to make it simple and easy for people to foster job opportunities, build relationships, share knowledge, and really just squash stereotypes.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Mhm.
when I learned about your organization, I was super stoked. And then I was like, how is this not a thing already? I know that there's a Toronto version, there's BIPOC Film and TV, but you're the first organization focused on the BC and the Vancouver film and TV industry and diversity.
Correct, surprisingly, yeah. But before I go down the path of how it all came to be, I want to first recognize that I'm doing this talk from the unceded shared ancestral lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations.
Mhm.
And I want to thank Max and Evan from film school for the invite.
Thank you for acknowledging that. And I want to shame myself as host for not opening with that. Apparently I still have much to learn about this as well. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure. So, you know, to your point of the fact that there's been nothing like this um, west of the Rockies is, it started for me this time last year when I knew a change for me was coming in my life, and COVID hit, and sent everyone home to think about their lives, and like many, I think, wondering about the future and where things are going to be. And for me, I'm a family man now. I've got a little guy at home, and things that were important to me in my 30s aren't the same now that I'm in my mid 40s. And for the last 15 years, I was a production or a partner in a production company, Pink Buffalo Films. Big office in Gastown, 20 plus full-time employees, and a few partners, and a lot of that overhead and stress laid on my shoulders. And I just, I have no problem with stress and heavy workloads. I mean, as you mentioned, I wear many hats right now, but I didn't want to be the dad that's not home, and the father or the husband that's not present. So a change was coming for me, and I embraced change, and so I decided to leave Pink Buffalo and sell my shares, and step back and create some space in my life to see what would come my way. Now, a few things happened that was interesting. One is to go back to radio, which I was in radio in the early 2000s for a number of years. So to come back to radio was an easy decision. I mean, it's fun, it's music based, it's entertaining, we give stuff away. But it ends early, it ends at like 9 a.m. So I still have lots of time to do stuff. And I also have a creative consultancy where we do digital campaigns, broadcast, TV commercials, documentaries, and the rest. And I love storytelling, and I'll never leave that. But I wanted something with meaning, something with heart that I could work on, like a passion project.
Mm-hmm.
And so, growing up in Vancouver, partly Vancouver, I was also raised in Hawaii and Montreal, but growing up in a mixed race family, my mother is Black and my father is white, I've always been hyper aware of stereotypes in TV and advertising and movies. And then when I was in the industry itself, I was always super hyper aware of the fact that the people behind the camera, in Vancouver in particular, weren't very diverse. So it's always been on my mind, the idea of diversity and inclusion, but this was long before those D&I, those words were even used.
Right.
And so when I finally had some space in my head to explore things that were and still are very important to me, I came up with the idea to, I did this exercise called 7 Layers Deep by Dan Grazios. It's very similar to Simon Sinek's Always Start With Why. It's not what you do, it's why you do it. And I knew connection, multiculturalism, these are all things that are important to me, but I wanted to dig a bit deeper and find out where that comes from. So this exercise called 7 Layers Deep is, you simply ask yourself, you know, Omari, why do you enjoy doing what you do? And there's probably a surface level explanation. Perhaps you can tell us real quick right now why that is.
Well, as an act, like myself personally, as an actor, it was always being able to lose yourself in a role and the connection to other individuals. That's the surface level answer. But
Mm-hmm.
representation and diversity as a Black man was always
Yeah.
important to me as well. And I know that part of what inspired me, like some of my heroes were people like, Denzel Washington or Will Smith or Chadwick Boseman when I got older. So it was actors that got to, or Sidney Poitier, of course,
Of
actors
course.
who embodied people who look like me with a certain degree of dignity. Like this is what got me into the business. So that's the deeper answer.
Yeah. And so you've gotten about 2 layers deep, which is
Mm.
great. Thank you for sharing. And the idea is just keep asking yourself why. And I implore the audience to do this at home. You can do it with a friend, do it with your partner, but just keep digging. And what you're going to do is you're going to uncover different emotions, and you'll tie words to those emotions. And you just keep asking yourself, okay, why is that important to me? And you get to around 4 or 5 levels down, and you're going to get a little emotional, and you'll probably have a bit of a cry, because you're going to start uncovering childhood memories, because everything goes back to childhood, either somebody in your life or experiences in your life. And for me, I uncovered, both my parents are from Montreal, and that's very multicultural. And I grew up in a household that always had lots of different people over, of all kinds of backgrounds. So multiculturalism, community, connection, these are all things that are super important to me. So I thought, okay, what can I do with this exactly as a passion project? And so I just started reaching out to other people of color in the film industry in Vancouver, who I've worked with a handful, obviously, over the last 15 years. But I knew there had to be a lot more out there. And by about the fifth person, and everybody was really excited about the idea of me even just reaching out to want to talk and hear some stories. And everyone has very, very similar stories about whether that's, overt, blatant racism, or
Mhm.
the power structures that are in place that
Sure.
keep people marginalized. And at first, I thought I was creating like maybe a Excel spreadsheet of people that I could call on when I put together projects. But as I kept meeting with people and the excitement of everybody, I thought, okay, I think this could be something more than Excel spreadsheets. So I just did some simple Googling and to see if there's anything like that in Vancouver. And as you mentioned right off the top, not even a Facebook page, zip, nothing.
Well, can I share something with you?
Yeah, please.
My personal Facebook page has been a de facto place where casting agents go to find BIPOC talent. And I don't
No.
even mean that facetiously. I recently received, and this happens quite often, the casting directors will reach out to me because they know I'm connected in the community. And a major show for a major network just cast an actress from my Facebook page. And I was astounded that networks that have the money and the resources and the network that you assume would be able to cast such a wide net were at a loss for where to go. So it's
Yeah.
really exciting to me to hear that you're creating this formalized process so that people don't have to rely on the only Black guy they know's Facebook page. Not that it's the only Black guy they know. I'm sure they know two or
Sure.
three. You know what
Sure,
I'm saying?
sure. Exactly. And I did find the folks, BIPOC Team Film in Toronto, have been doing great work for a long time. But at the same time I'm going through this process, I see that Rogers, Bell, Chum, CBC all started backing BIPOC TV Film in Toronto. And what that was a great indicator to me was that big business in Canada is starting to put their money where their mouth is. And that's
Sure.
important. And,
Yeah.
and so when I saw that, I thought, okay, that's really interesting. That should be able to give me the fuel to push the same type of idea in Vancouver. So
I mean, if I can, to add to your point, if you look at the success, the overwhelming success of films like Black Panther or Crazy Rich Asians, I think from a business standpoint, it's not a hard sell to tell executives or networks there is a hunger for more diverse representation. And if you look at the demographics of Vancouver, I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but Vancouver is actually a majority diverse city, the Lower
Mhm,
Mainland. I believe a census came out and it was 53% diverse. And that's,
mhm,
a combination of Asia, of East Asian, South Asian, Black, Indigenous. The majority of people in this city are diverse. Now,
mhm,
there is clearly a massive gap between the demographics of our city and the demographics of our industry. And
mhm.
I think that closing that gap will only increase interest from untapped communities.
Yeah, and that's it. And the idea though of collective is a community. I'm glad you said that word, Omar,
Mhm.
because what I'm trying to build with it is not a database.
Mhm.
It's a community, and the fact that while there is a pretty diverse community here, we're very spread out, very
Yeah.
very very thin. So when I decided I'm going to put my energy into this and create a website, come up with the idea for the mission, and just start adding people to the site after about a month of meeting with everybody. And I'm not just blindly adding people to the website either. Like I'm taking an hour. Everybody that you see on the site, I've sat down over Zoom now and talk to them for at least an hour. That's partly to vet them and hear their stories, and I ask questions like, outside of job opportunities, what added value can a collective bring to you, and just have a bit of a focus group as I start growing the collective. And so this was in about September, and since September, the collective, the membership itself has grown immensely. Now the membership is free, and the whole point of the site is to keep it free and open source for members and as well as industry to be able to find people and hire them if they can.
Mm.
So I've got support from the different major production companies in town, all the agencies. So these are the people that are doing all the hiring, the production managers, the producers, etc.
Right.
And while they have all equivocally told me that they know they're doing a bad job, they know they need to invest in diversity, but they don't know where to start because they look around the table and everybody looks the same. So, thank you, Jason, for building this resource, and we'll support as much as we can. But I still need to do the work every day to hold them accountable,
Sure.
hold the feet to the fire, remind them that these people are here, because it's human nature. People go back to what they've always done.
Well, something that I have been very cognizant of is, and I saw you talk about this in an interview you did with the Globe and Mail, is that after the events last summer involving George Floyd went viral,
Yeah.
the issue of systemic racism and diversity it went viral really in North America, and it's amazing that that is what it took for people to wake up. But my main concern was, how do we take the momentum of this moment and move it into a movement?
Mhm.
Because what often happens, as you know, I'm sure, is something goes viral, the conversations kick up, everybody's got black squares on their Instagram page for a week, and
Mhm.
then they move on to the
Yeah.
next episode of Dancing with the Stars or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's exciting to hear about initiatives like this that are, building a foundation to make change. I think
Mhm.
it's a really great thing. And I had a question.
Mhm.
Earlier, you mentioned that each person on the website you talk to as sort of a vetting process.
Mhm.
Now, this is an interesting topic because, and I won't name names, but there was a
Mhm.
very high profile case at the CBC that I'm sure you heard of.
Trickster.
Okay, well, you'll name names. So,
Oh, well, not the person's name, but
right. But everybody knows what I'm talking about. There was a
yeah.
very high profile case of a very talented individual and a very successful show
Mhm.
that and I'm not accusing anyone of malice or deliberate misrepresentation, but this case of someone who identified as part of a certain community, and it was later revealed that those ties might not have been as strong as they were. What
Mhm.
is the process? Is it just voluntary self-identification? Like if somebody, let's say hypothetically, somebody with blonde hair and blue eyes shows up and tells you, I am a Black man and I'd like to be on this website. What is the process for vetting people?
Well, that's a very That's a very good question. I haven't had that yet. Um, to be honest, I would probably add them to the site because, you know, the whole idea about identity politics right now are a bit touchy. And, you know, if you honestly believe that in your heart of hearts, you know, all the power to you. But the point of my vetting is well, first of all, everyone is, you know, it's the social media, Instagram generation where everybody's really okay with sharing their photos anyway. So most people are sending me their headshots and their bios and their examples of work right off the top, and I can kind of see who they are. But the vetting process is more for me to get an idea of what people are looking for when joining a collective. And also because I'm putting my name in front of everyone on the site with my relationships that I have with the production companies or with agencies, etc. I want to make sure that these people are going to, you know, do me right in a way.
Sure.
Where if they do get hired, they're going to do great work, and the people who hire them are going to be happy, and therefore they'll continue to use Collective Bunch.
Well, see, I don't know what it was like in your household, but, and by the way, we have very similar upbringings. I'm also from Montreal, and I grew up in a very diverse community. J'espère que tu parles en français.
No, unfortunately, no.
Okay, I'll stop that then. But but I have Trinidadian parents, and I grew up in Montreal. And a big thing in my household, it was a running joke actually, is my parents would be like, not only whatever you're doing are you representing yourself, but you're representing the entire community. So don't embarrass Black people everywhere by messing this up.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously you're not taking it that far, but you know, as a collective you started, I'm sure there is a sense of pride where you don't want, the last thing you want to do is recommend someone and then a production company using their failure as a justification for not opening up the door to be more inclusive.
You nailed it, man. The majority of leadership these days, they have cognitive bias. They have deep stereotypes, and that's due to systemic racism, that's due to the power structure and colonialism, not necessarily their direct fault, but these things are within most leadership. And yeah, I would hate to give them any kind of fuel for that fire. You're exactly right. But you know, I think the best place to start when it comes to overcoming these obstacles, Mari, is just simple education in regards to what is diversity. You know, what does privilege mean? What does white privilege mean? What are systems of oppression? And perhaps we can talk a little bit about that. You know, to me, diversity inclusion, in a very simple way to put it, always meant, it's like, if you're going to have a dinner party, diversity is inviting people from different backgrounds. Simple. And inclusion is giving them a voice at the table, letting them speak. It's just that simple to me. But, you know, perhaps some of our viewers are unaware that there's lots of different aspects to what diversity means. You know, to me, it can be broken into race, it can be broken into gender, class, sexual orientation, or ability.
Or ability, and that's a big one. Yeah, and I think socioeconomic class and ability are things that often get overlooked, right? And if you look at things from an intersectional lens, there's layers to it too. And for anybody listening who's not familiar with this, it's like, I experienced some degree of discrimination walking through the world as a Black man, but I also in some areas experienced degrees of privilege as a man, whereas a Black woman experiences levels of you know, systemic barriers. And if you're a Black queer woman who's also disabled, there's levels to it as well. And I think that like deeper level of conversation is where the industry is heading now, where they're understanding it's not just about like checking a box and going, we got our one Black guy, so diversity is covered. You know, it's understanding it in more of a holistic way.
Exactly. And I think it's important for people to also understand that it gets broken down even further. So you can be discriminated against by your age, by your education, you know, your income, life experiences, language, religion, and in some places in the world, your family status.
Yeah.
So these are all things that play into what diversity means, because I think it's a word that's really getting thrown around a lot, but not a lot of people think about what it truly means. And then there's something, called white privilege or privilege, which is part and parcel with diversity and inclusion. And that's also broken down into a few different things in my belief. And that's, access to power, wealth, decision making, safety, freedom, and what's perceived as normal. So, something as simple as like decision making. If you're at the top and everybody else kind of looks like you at the top, then you're in a privileged position. Or when it comes to like sexual orientation and safety and freedom, I don't feel I feel free to walk around and hold my partner's hand, where some places you might not feel safety to do that. So there's a lot of privilege that's also broken down into different aspects, and another thing that I don't think many people really think about.
I think that's a really good point. I think that there are people who might not understand how the culture of an environment can have even a subconscious impact on people navigating it. Like, I know there are certain networks that when I show up on a set and everyone in front of and behind the camera looks a certain way that is not similar to me, it adds a level of, I don't want to say anxiousness, but a level of awareness to my work that I don't think I would have if, and I'm not saying that I want, predominantly Black sets, although that would be wonderful. And I've been in theater where that's been the case. But when you're the only one in a place, it adds a level of pressure and awareness of how you carry yourself that I'm not sure if people realize. And it's interesting when you live in a place where the de facto norm is everybody looks like you take it for granted that you feel welcomed everywhere you go.
Yeah.
I hope people listening are aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. What other aspects? Just a little bit of education on some of the terms when it comes to this. How about systems of oppression?
Mm-hmm.
Can you name some systems of oppression?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, if you believe in systemic racism and you believe in the effects of colonialism and a colonial mindset, right? And you acknowledge, and this rubs people the wrong way, but it's true. You acknowledge that society is white supremacist in a passive way, is patriarchal in a passive way, then everything involved in that system is a system of oppression. And for those listening, I know that hearing things like white supremacy, people get defensive, but I'll give you a really standard example that I'm sure you've heard of. There have been multiple studies done on just job interviews. When a person hands in a resume and the name on the resume sounds ethnic, they are less likely to be called in for interviews than somebody whose name sounds more European or more white. And there have been studies done where it's been the exact same resume, but on the top of one it says, Jamal Abdul, and the other it's Bob Smith. Same resume, same school, everything else, qualifications, but just that name, subconsciously, some people see that and think, I don't know if this person will fit into the culture. I mean, that's an example of a system of oppression. Or, I mean, look, films tend to be a closed system to begin with. If everyone in your circle is white and male and straight and from a certain socioeconomic class, you might not even realize that the people who come in to interview for jobs that you connect to are from that same background. But you're subconsciously perpetuating this system of oppression because you're like, oh, I like this guy. You don't realize the reason you like this guy is they're a wealthy, good old boy who's, Christian and straight.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. And these things are just going to take time, but I think the awareness of the definitions of some of these things people need to understand, because that's the first step to moving forward and changing that. And some of those systems of oppression, have to do a lot with our industry. Banking, for example. You want to bankroll a project? How about access to credit and financing?
Yeah.
That's a big one. That's a big one. Sure.
I'll take it even, it's not even, yes, absolutely. But even personal banking, I don't know about what your experiences have been like at banks, but I remember now I always bring my checks to the teller because I remember there was times when I've had my entire account frozen at
Mhm.
banks I've been at for a long time, or times when I've gone to the teller with a check. And, in film, sometimes you get large checks. And these are checks that are issued from the institution that I'm trying to cash them in. And they
Mhm.
scrutinize you as though you're a criminal. And you sit there going like, if I was a 50-year-old white dude, would there be this much
Mhm.
scrutiny? And you never know, right? It's just, yeah, access to capital and resources is a major, major issue.
Totally, man. So
Uh,
understanding systems. Sorry, please go ahead.
well, I was just going to say we have some questions funneling in, and I just want to encourage everybody listening. Please take part in the chat, and if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A section, and I'll ask Jason the question, and I'll let you go on, and I'll ask the first question that's listed here.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Oh,
understanding the systems of oppression, understanding what privilege means, understanding the different aspects of diversity, all important to then be able to, whether you're in leadership or below the line, but to help organizations with their transformation. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, but education, I think, is the very first step, because then once you understand the definition of these things, you can recognize your own privilege and the harm that's caused by it. But you need to first recognize your own privilege and
mhm.
how you're part of that problem.
See,
Um,
I said I was going to go to the questions, but now your comments, I've sparked a question in my head.
mhm,
So you are in a relative position of power as an executive producer.
mhm.
How have you found being a BIPOC person? What are the barriers you found you faced navigating these spaces of power with people who I assume don't necessarily look like you or have the same cultural background as you?
Mhm, mhm. I think there's, some from some of the circles that I've been in. There's cognitive bias and stereotypes that are already, attached, and sometimes I feel like I can't uh, fully be myself, um, if that makes sense. And I have to kind of code switch, which is a word that is somewhat new. You understand? You probably heard that one, right?
I understand it. I doubt if our viewers do, but I'm happy to explain
Go
if
ahead.
so, guys, code switching, and there's actually a great movie starring like Lakeith Stanfield called "Sorry to Bother You." That's like a satirical version of this, but code
Mhm.
switching is something that people of color will often do to navigate predominantly white circles. And I'll give you a funny example. It's like you talk to your homie on the phone, you might be like, "Hey, what's up, man? Good to hear from you. What's going on?" And then when you get to work and you got to code switch into your corporate voice, and you're just like, "Oh, well, hello, how are you today, sir?" Now that was the full-on Eddie Murphy version, but that's what code switching is changing your mannerisms and the way you speak to adapt to predominantly white spaces.
Yeah, that's about it. That's about it.
Mhm. Let me jump to the questions here. We've got Bastian Orleana says, "Hi, Jason. How are you? My name is Bastian, and I too grew up in Montreal." Oh, shout out. 3 Montrealers here. Which I agree is a huge melting pot. I'm currently very interested in being a producer and creating a production media house which focuses precisely on multiculturalism. Do you have any tips for me into creating such a project?
Yes, join Collective Bunch and come talk to me about it.
There you go. You have the open offer. Next question here, Jennifer Mendoza. Hello, Jason and Omari. I've worked with Squamish Nation as a youth mentor, but I didn't know there were specific resources for film and casting opportunities. Could you please elaborate on where you could reach them, and what the process would be like?
Yes, there's lots of great resources like NSI, which is the National Screen Institute, Telefilm, Canadian Media Fund. Um, I think those are the top three right off the top of my head. The Indigenous Screen Institute, that's another one, or an Indigenous Screen Organization. Am I saying that right, Omari?
I believe so, yeah. I mean, Canada Council, if there's an entire
Yep.
wing for Indigenous theater artists for sure. I mean, Heritage Canada, I know, also has stuff. Yeah, there's a number of resources, and you can also reach out to me on social media and send me a message. And I often post stuff on my personal pages about this. But there are lots of resources, and there are some great lists where you can access them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. We have another question here. This is the $1 million question. Chantel Niles, what are your insights into financing or board roles and their growing commitment to diversity? Is there a push at that level, at the level of financing?
None that I have seen. When it comes to boards, in the last year, I have noticed that a lot of organizations are pushing to diversify the boards, but that can be tricky because quite often members are kind of they are in a position where they have to stay on for a year or two or three. So it's not something that you can change overnight when it comes to a board. But what I'm seeing is the majority of companies with boards are making a move. And something as simple as gender, most boards are full of men. Like even like forget about diversity and people of color. You need to first start like diversing on a gender basis. But it's definitely happening. But I haven't really seen much on the finance side. Have you, Omar?
See, I have produced my own projects independently, and I haven't really worked at large institutions in that way. So, but I can definitely speak to as an independent creator. I'll definitely say that we are in a moment right now where the spotlight is shining on BIPOC artists more than it has in the past. And I have seen a number of opportunities present themselves. Only there are still systemic barriers in the way of some of them because, like, for example, I'm a playwright, and some of the criteria for funding require that you've been published or produced as a playwright, which to have been published or produced as a playwright speaks to a certain degree of privilege that some of the people at the furthest ends of the margins might have to overcome. And a lot of it, frankly, a lot of the grant writing stuff, I don't know what you found, it's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a certain language to writing grants and applying for funding that it doesn't mean your project is better or worse. You just know how to present a professional proposal. I don't know what you found, but that's what I've noticed.
Yeah, I come from a bit of an old school entrepreneur background where I've actually never taken any grant money in my life for anything. I've always gone brand direct or business direct or raised the capital myself. But I did get a very good piece of advice from yesterday, actually, from the president of Telefilm, Barbara, who said, you should invest in a very good grant writer.
Oh yeah.
Don't do it yourself.
Changed my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd been applying for grants for years unsuccessfully. Yeah. And I'm going to repeat the terminology that Jason used: invest in a good grant writer. And this is a whole other conversation that affects BIPOC communities about a scarcity mindset. And I understand why we have it, because we've been historically shut out of access. But the people I know who are very successful do view those things as an investment. They go, I'm going to invest this funding to get a professional grant writer. Whereas when you're not used to having any, you go, I don't have a couple $100 to pay out for that resource. But it really does pay incredible dividends right away. And it's changing the way you think.
Exactly. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
We have an interesting comment here, and I think maybe both of us can help this person out. But I see Nina Fontaine Ellis says that she's been trying to get into the industry for years, but feels like the work is never good enough, and had to take they had to take their profile pic off of their resume because they felt as though they were being judged. Now I don't know the specifics of this person, and I can't see who this person is. And first off, I'm really sorry to hear that that has been your experience. And I'd love to hear more, to know if there's ways that I can give more specific feedback. I don't know, Jason, if there's anything you would want to add to that. But
yeah, I'm curious, what is she applying for with that resume on her photo?
And I assumed it was a she, by the way, which was my bad. I don't know what they have applied for. But yeah, if you want to give us a little bit more info, or if you're more comfortable reaching out in private, you can do that. But, I have friends in the industry who they changed their stage name, actors. They changed their stage name to sound less ethnic. And it makes me really sad that is like, and I understand why they did it, but it makes me sad that people feel like they have to hide a part of themselves to gain access in this industry. And I think things are changing. And if producers can learn the name Schwarzenegger, They can learn whatever diverse names are in the industry.
Yeah, and to that person's question, and to your point, things are changing. Do not give up hope. Um, outside of taking your picture off your resume, I think you can get creative with trying to get past the gatekeeper. Again, I'm not sure what you're applying for exactly, but yeah, if you want to reach out to me privately, I'd be more than happy to discuss how you can get past some of those barriers for sure.
Okay. And Nina did confirm, said, yes, I am a she, biracial, Black, Guyanese, and Indigenous First Nations. Yeah, I think reach out to us afterwards, and I'd love to give you more in-depth feedback. I've got another great question here, and this is from Jennifer Clement. Hello, Jennifer. Says, what does being a good ally look like for both of us within the actor's work and within education?
What does a good ally look like between actors and education? I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think the question was in the professional realm, what does it look like to be a good ally? I guess if you're a producer or director, and in addition to that, in an educational context, if it's the Jennifer that I know, this is the head of Vancouver Film School's acting department. So I think Jennifer's asking about the best way to be an ally within educational institutions. And I know I have my thoughts on that, but if you want to go first.
Well, I think it's already begun, thanks to Max and Evan. Bringing you on full time and even just having me on as a talk and possibly supporting the work I'm trying to do with Collective Bunch. I need, you could start with recruitment and retainment. People in color in leadership positions, engage in ongoing activities and training and conversation about race and equity and cultural relevance for everyone. Yeah, continue to seek partnerships with organizations and coalitions like Collective Bunch to work on race equity issues. I think is a good start.
Yeah,
on that.
I would agree with that, and I'll add to that is continuing to listen with humility and empathy when diverse people, both within and without of your organization, raise concerns or flag issues, or even to be proactive and think to yourself, always be looking at things from the mind frame of how do we make our institution more accessible? How do we make it more inclusive so that you're not in a reactive state? And I know personally that there are institutions like Vancouver Film School is in the process of doing that right now. And I think, undoing years and years and years of systemic racism will not happen overnight. And it's an active conversation. So I guess I'll finish by saying, be an active ally, constantly question and ask if you're doing all you can.
Yeah.
We have another question here. Ty Gibson says, there have been compassion trainings within organizations and COVID safety as well. Would you suggest anti-racist initiatives on set of film productions?
Yeah, on set could be a bit tricky because time is money, but in the pre-production process, yes, 100%. There are so many great D&I consultants out there right now that, I think it's a really, really good idea in the pre-production phase to have some of these discussions. Yeah, absolutely. Possibly mandatory. I mean, sometimes you have to force that change.
And I'll take it even further. I think until things are incentivized, I don't know how much some of the old guard will take part in these things. I know that there have been conversations in the UK about in order to be up for consideration for awards or certain funding, you have to meet a certain criteria in terms of diversity and inclusivity. And I'm not talking about quotas, but like if 99% of the people on your project are white and you live in a city like London or New York or Montreal or Vancouver, this is a problem. Right. And I think if you tie either the carrot or the stick, either you incentivize people that if you meet these checkpoints, it unlocks certain funding, or you say you will be excluded from consideration, one or the other. But I don't know if people will do it. Some people have been in the industry for a long time on their own. I don't know what your take on this, but
Yeah, well, some people are starting to use different evaluation policies and self-reporting tools, tracking who is contributing to the work. That's a decent step forward.
Mhm. And I know the union UBCP Actor has been doing a lot of great work, doing censuses and getting track of who their membership is and which production companies are better
Mhm.
or worse in that area. And I think data is power, right? When you can go to producers with hard facts,
Yeah.
it's really hard for them to deny there's an issue.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I'm hoping to do with Collective Bunch is I'm tired of hearing we know we need to diversify our teams, but we don't know where to start because we don't know how to find people.
Yeah.
Well, come see, they're all here.
Yeah, it's funny. I produced a play a couple years ago, and it was an all-black cast. And we were told we had to produce it ourselves because no company wanted to pick it up. And something we were told constantly was, "We don't know where you'll find 5 black actors." And meanwhile, as a black actor, all my black friends were actors. Every film set I'm on, and I mean, it's sad, but in the early days, whenever there was a movie about basketball or prison, there was hundreds of black people suddenly available. And when you wanted to play, I mean, it's true, right? But
Yeah,
when you wanted to play, all of a sudden, they're like, "Where are you going to find these actors?" Uh,
yeah.
we jump to another question here, and we'll try our best to answer this. But Bridget Klassen Bruhl says, "Hi, Jason and Omari. I am Bridget. I am an asexual female screenwriter and director. I'm curious what your advice would be for someone working on a series focusing on people of color and people who are LGBTQ plus."
Do you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah. Well, Bridget, I am always of the mindset. I don't think that you have to necessarily be from a community to write about that community. I'm not a believer in that. There have been some brilliant works of art that were about the Black community that were not necessarily written by Black people. I do think, however, especially in something like television or film, you should be in deep conversation and consultation with any communities that you wish to speak about that you are not a member of. And I don't know, perhaps you are a person of color and a member of the LGBTQ plus community. I don't know what your situation is. I would just say if you're going to be interpreting voices of communities you're not part of, you should align yourself with people from those communities. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Mhm. We have another question here. This is Jennifer Mendoza said, I've been told before that ethnicity should not be specified in character bios unless it's a key factor to the story. Do you believe this is an accurate statement?
I I think you should keep it in. It gives a little bit of background in my imagination of who the character could possibly be.
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You?
I don't, and I'll take it even further. I insist that it be put in because as a writer myself, I can tell you diversity is not interchangeable. Even though this is a popular thing now in film and TV, that you get these breakdowns and it says submit all ethnicities, as though casting your lead as Asian or casting them as Black doesn't affect the story. It's ridiculous. Like I do not believe in this concept of color blind casting. I
Mhm.
believe in color conscious casting, but I think a person who shows up on screen or on stage, they carry a story with them.
Mhm.
If you have a love scene that takes place in 1950s America, it matters if it's a love scene between a Black man and a white woman. The context changes. So I think if you're writing from a place where you're being thoughtful about the story you're telling, the ethnicity of the people you're writing shouldn't be arbitrary. You should have a specific character in mind, and it matters if that person is Black or white or whatever, a member of the LGBT community. So I would encourage you to be as specific as possible.
Yeah, good answer.
We have another question here. Bastian or Rolana again says, how can we also diversify and not stereotype while trying to bring real and authentic storytelling?
Well, if you want to get past stereotyping, you need to spend time with people outside of your bubble so you can truly understand where these other people are coming from. Um, that'll create empathy, and that'll get rid of your stereotypes. So you can still have diversity and not bring in any kind of stereotypes, I think. But you need to spend time with these people to understand. That's it.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with what you're saying. And I'll add to that again, the question of specificity, because, you know, I've only seen one episode, but you think about a show like Bridgerton that Shonda Rhimes is doing right now, that's a big hit. I don't think there's any stereotypical characters in that piece. She's written specific, unique characters. And by being specific and writing unique, authentic characters, you avoid stereotypes. Now, I think there is a place for archetypes. If you're telling a specific story and you want someone to represent a certain era or time period, that's fine, but it's still an individual character. Like, don't write broad, you know, stereotypes. Just be specific in who the person is, and you'll avoid stereotyping them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you know, some stereotypes, you can see how they're born because there are certain things that people do. You know, Trinis like the lime. Anybody else like the lime?
Are you a Trini also?
Part Bayesian, but I've been to Trinidad, so that's why I know. But it's true. You know, that's a stereotype in a way. You know,
we've lost. I mean, I'm going to stereotype now. I think we've lost our white audience talking about liming. You want to explain liming?
Yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't have West Indian roots, liming is chillin'. Yeah. So that's West Indian speak for chillin'. By the way, a live correction. I just got a text from my wife, who's my co-writer and my partner, who said, Shonda did not write Bridgerton. She loves Bridgerton. She said, Shonda produced it. So I've just been live edited by my wife on air. I'm sorry, Shonda produced Bridgerton. I apologize, Amy.
That's a partner. That's a partner right there. Good on her.
Yeah. So I guess my next question for you is how optimistic are you about the timeline for seeing real systemic change in this industry?
I think it's going to take a generation, honestly, not a full 25 years generation, but the next generation. So if you are coming out of high school, if you're in your early 20s, by the time you're my age, things will be very, very, very different. So a big focus for me and Collective Bunch moving forward is focusing on the voices of tomorrow. So the conversations I've been having, whether it's somebody who's a seasoned veteran who, you know, has been in a union and has worked 20 years in the film industry, who, you know, has gone through a lot of racism and really understands the need for diversity, opposed to someone who is in their 20s who have grown up online, who is really galvanized towards any kind of, it's a perfect age for change. You know, you're a change maker, you're a taste maker. And I've found that someone in the younger generation is full on telling me, you know, whatever they can do to help, put me in, coach. How can I help? What can I do? So they're really, really excited. So, you know, we need that kind of energy and we need that kind of momentum. So I'm going to really put a lot of effort into growing the voices of tomorrow, the 20-somethings. And that could be through workshops, that could be through skills training. Mentorship is going to be really important to me moving forward. So with that, I think, you know, educating them on all the things that we're discussing today, and then helping them, giving them the tools to build their career in the industry. So by the time, you know, 10 years, 15 years, the old guard will be gone. They'll be retired and they'll be replaced by these new voices of tomorrow. So I think it's not a long time, but it's definitely not in the next, you know, two to 5 years, a little longer, but that's okay. We've got that.
This sort of answered, I just saw this next great question here by Vanessa Marshall, who said, do you have any ideas for people in large companies or studios who are trying to get leaders on board to make systemic change, particularly in project-based environments? It feels like there are lots of us in lower positions wanting to do something, but have trouble getting meaningful buy-in. You kind of answered that, whether you're saying it's a generational process.
Yeah, it's a generational process, and it's just going to take education. We're talking about people who, if you're in your 50s, your late 50s, if you're in a leadership position, you're in your late 50s or early 60s, your brain is wired a certain way for a very, very long time. It's going to take these people a while, man. And it is. It's just the reality. It's going to take them a while to be comfortable around all these new faces and to learn and unlearn, really, everything that we've talked about today. It's going to take time. We need patience, but we need to do it together.
It's just made me think. I just did an online workshop for a play my wife and I are writing, and this wonderful older actor, sweetest guy in the world, he came on to this reading, and we did a land acknowledgement, and then we identified our pronouns, and we all went around. We got to him, and he said, "This is," he said, "this is the first time I've done a workshop on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time I've done a land acknowledgement, and it's the first time I've identified my pronouns." And he wasn't defensive about it. He wasn't. He was just like, wow, this is really a new world. And I thought it was such a like symbolic moment for the evolution that's happening in our industry. So it gives me hope that people can change, you know?
Absolutely. And it's going to be, again, up to us together. Some of the best ways to go about doing that is to be yourself and do the best job you can. So you can, as your mom and dad used to say, represent the community, act like you've been somewhere.
Don't embarrass the family name and the entire Black community.
Exactly.
So we have a few minutes left. So I'm just going to ask one. I'll let people know what's the best way to get in touch with you and the Collective Bunch?
Visit the website first, collectivebunch.com, one word.
Mm-hmm.
Check out some of the people that are on there. And you can simply reach out by hitting the join button, or you know what? Contact me personally, jason@collectivebunch.com. I've got time. I'll make time for everybody. I'll make, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is. I'll make the time to listen and talk and figure out the best way to help you.
And I know you kids out there, you like your social media, so you can hit them up. I know this is Instagram. Is this all the things? It's at collective_bunch is how you reach them on social media.
Yeah.
So do that well.
Yeah. And I'd like to remind everybody too that, this is brand new. We're like 5, almost 6 months old. We are just getting started. I am also doing it by myself with the help of my wife for the graphic design. But because I produce the morning show and I've got my consultancy, I'm growing the Collective Bunch from my heart till the late hours at night. But that's going to change. I'm going to start bringing on some people to help me grow this. So if you look at the Instagram page and you're like, wow, there's only like 200 followers, it's because we're new. Give us some time, give us some support, and we'll grow.
Personally, I expect you to fix racism next week. And if that doesn't happen, I think the project would have been a total waste. No, I'm kidding. No, of course. I think it's a brilliant thing you're doing. I'm any way I can help and take part. I'm down, whether it's in my capacity at Vancouver Film School or just as an actor. I'd love to talk to you afterwards. I love what you're doing. It's really, really exciting. I want to end with, if you can give people listening one piece of advice, right? No matter what capacity they're in the industry, how can they make the environments that they work in more inclusive and more accepting and accessible? What should they do?
Yeah, a couple things. Momentum. Now is the time. I think the reason why Collective has grown so big, so fast, it's all about timing. You had mentioned George Floyd and BLM, and there's this new big wave of change that's crashing up on our shores from the south. We need to strike while the iron is hot. We need to keep the momentum going, keep pushing, whether that's getting together, whether that's holding people accountable. We need to keep pushing and stay curious. Get to know other people outside of your bubble. It's simple. It's simple. It's simple. Get out of your bubble, man. Get curious. And third, critical thinking. Use your head. Use your head. Remember some of these things that we talked about. What diversity means. What is privilege? What is white privilege? What are the different systems of oppression? Once you really understand all these things, critical thinking will be much easier. Use your head. And finally, gratitude.
Okay.
Gratitude.
I said I had one more question. I lied. Are there any resources you'd recommend? Any books or documentaries or shows that you'd recommend for people to check out?
Oh, no, to be honest.
Okay,
Do
that's
you? Do you have any books or movies?
there's some standard ones. There's like how to be anti-racist. There's
Yeah.
white white fragility is a good one. There's a number of great ones, and if you follow me on social media, I post about these things all the time. I'm the most insufferable liberal you can imagine. So just if you want to get bombarded with resources, you can just follow me on all the things. And
That's great. I'd love some of these resources too. Thank you.
awesome. Well, I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us for this excellent conversation. And Jason, we'll be in touch. And thank you for the work you do.
Thank you, man. This was really fun. And again, thank you to Max and Evan from VFS. And thank you all for taking the time to listen.
Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
All right.